Hi, I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and today we are joined by some of the wonderful cast from Netflix's The Woman in the House Across the Street from the Girl in the Window. We're joined by Mary Holland, Shelley Hennig, and Christina Anthony. And Mary, I wanted to start with a question for you in the way that you've shaped your character's relationship with Kristen Bell's character Anna, because that's obviously a central precipice in relationship for her within the show. And I love the fact that you're playing this character who kind of unabashedly shows up for her friend, is there, the first person to sit there and listen to her and really give her the space that she needs, but also still never hesitates to kind of step in and call her on things as well. And I thought that you struck that balance of the two spaces really nicely with Kristen. So I was interested in how you worked to shape that.
Yeah, well, I mean, working with Kristen, she is just an incredible actor and creator, and she's just so easy. I think all of us can attest to how easy it is to fall into those relationships with her and build a dynamic with her between these two characters. And I think part of what was so much fun about playing Sloane and working off of Kristen and Anna's energy is that Sloane is very much a steady, grounding presence for Anna. So, when I would come into a scene, Kristen would be sort of, consumed mentally and emotionally in this story she was telling herself. And so to get to come in and like witness her in this kind of tempest and then sort of try to bring her back down to reality, but do so in a very gentle way, knowing that she's been through so much in her life recently and that, grief is so hard to process and work through. And so I really enjoyed getting to play that character in this story and be that presence for her.
I love that. And then jumping over to you, Shelley, because we're talking and the show's already come out, so we can dive into spoilers a little bit. I was interested in how you shaped the duality of your character, because you have this idea of who she is potentially. We kind of maybe only know fractions of that. And then you have the external version of what she allows other people to know about herself and the way that she's presenting herself to the world. And as we learn, obviously, there's a very manipulative element to that. And so I was interested in how you approach shaping a character that essentially has two very different facets within herself potentially.
Yes. Also, I really want to say really quick, Mary, because we haven't been able to talk. I'm so sorry, but the dynamic where you were kind of like freaking her out and like a little bit on her, was that in the script? I can't remember. Or is that something that you added where you're like, I'm so sorry? Was that something you did with Michael or Kristen or something you
Yeah, I mean, Kristen, we did a lot of improvising, a lot of just kind of playing and because I think we did want the dynamic between the two of us to be very loose and playful and sort of have a real levity to it and an ease. So we definitely improvised and like found stuff in the moment, and Michael was so supportive.
Yeah, it became a really fun bit that like I never would have thought of. Anyway, I really enjoyed that.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I think Chastity. Well, first of all, when I auditioned for Lisa, I didn't know there was a Chastity. So that was kind of a fun surprise. This is kind of the mini series that kept on giving. So that was really cool. When I met with Michael and he's like, yeah, so your Chastity character, I'm like, who? But Chastity is the most real version of those two characters. Chastity is who she is at her heart. Lisa is a very put on, almost like a Southern pageant girl, cliche, if you will. So it was fun to kind of bounce between the two. And Lisa was at times like uncomfortable because it was like acting on top of acting. But yeah, I really dove into the like housewives kind of like smile with, while you're arguing kind of bit. And Kristen and I like
so well.
Yeah, good. But it worked because, Kristen and I, it just sort of happened between us. And I happen to watch a lot of reality shows. But yeah, I will never forget doing the scene at the trash can with Kristen. Like, she scared the crap out of me, but like, I also scared her with the smile. It just was one of those, like you were saying, the dynamics that you created on the day that I didn't know it was going to go that way. And we just kept like, we could have done that scene for like 10 minutes. In fact, I think we argued with Michael to do it again because we had even more, we just wanted to live in that world of like, oh, hi, so that was really, really fun to play.
And then Christina, with your character, we learn a few episodes in that she has kind of an emotional connection to Anna within the story. And so that kind of explains a lot of the empathy that she comes forward with in their interactions. And so did you find that that really opened up the space that you were able to play this character in? Because it's not just about playing a character who's coming in a procedural way. There's a lot of kind of like emotional texture underneath, even before the audience knows what that reveal and connection is.
Oh yeah, this woman is ridiculous. What police officer holds that for so long that I know your family. In fact, I know your husband, and the same guy that ate your daughter, I know him too. I arrested him. I was the one actually that let him go. I just think that what a terrible detective she is. And the fact that she really does she detect anything during this? I went back, I had a chance to watch it too. And thank God for Kristen Bell / Anna / Veronica Mars. She solves the crime for her. I think, but it was fun because I think just similar to what Mary and Shelley were saying, like Kristen is so open to playing. We're, open to improvisation and just like building a rapport. And so we kind of played the game of, would we be friends outside of this? I think we would. But secretly, this detective, I let the guy go who killed and ate your daughter. And I'm not going to bring that up to you for 3 episodes. Yeah. It's just so, it was ridiculous. And it was so much fun to play. Yeah. To have that secret literally, and then blurt it out with a straight face. It was
so funny. It was
thank you.
I feel like across the board, like hearing Shelley and Christina talk about this, it really, having, as an actor, it's a real dream to get to just lean fully into a genre and play to the tropes of that genre while still having a self-awareness to that play. It's just really fun to do.
Yeah. And while we're talking, I was going to say about favorite moments. Also, that just kind of informed you about a person. One of my favorite moments that Shelley has is when she first comes up to meet Anna, and she asks Neil really quickly, "Do you have change to tip the driver?"
Yes.
And he gives her the money, and she says, "No, something smaller." And then if you look, it's $10. And you want to be like, "Ma'am, you came from the airport. I'm sure $10 is probably not even enough." It's so stupid. It's so small. I just loved it so much. I'm like, this woman's terrible.
Yeah.
And that's what I really wanted to dive into. I think for so many years in my career, I'm sure we've all felt this way. But I can only speak for myself. it was always the good girl. And so for the last 5 years, I found that, the writing for women has been so much more interesting, but it took a minute for me to die. I know I'm making a big moment out of this. Sorry. But that was a big deal for me to play into a terrible person. And so that's terrible. It's so fun.
I mean, jumping off the back of what all three of you are talking about, you have these very ridiculous moments, but they're played so straight-faced, and the performances are all on the same page, all incredibly grounded, and it's the circumstances and the external elements which are the places that get really ridiculous for them all. And so I was very interested in how the creative team kind of worked collaboratively with you in discussing the tone, figuring out the tone to make sure that all of your performances were landing in that same way, because nobody's coming in and kind of giving a side wink to the audience of we know what we're doing right here. Like you said, you're delivering the news of I know the guy that ate your 8-year-old daughter with complete severity.
If I'm completely honest about my experience, there was no conversations. Michael was you do what you do. And he really, and I felt he really just trusted that who he hired understood it from the beginning. And I don't know, that was my experience. And that's, I assume that was, yeah. Was that sort of what happened for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, I also think we had a table read of all the episodes before we started shooting, and I think that was also very helpful with all of us getting on the same page of the getting an understanding of the full picture, and then getting to read with each other and watch each other sort of, approach this dialogue. And what I think is so brilliant about this writing and Michael's directing too, because it is so. It is a really fine line to walk where when you make a satire of such a dark genre, it could so easily tilt into melodrama or too broad or it's a real tightrope walk, I think, to do. But I do think having that table read and then, Michael giving us the freedom to play within that, really helped, I feel like, get us all on the same page.
Yeah. And I had a chance to, I think in my conversations leading up to it, I didn't get a lot of information, but I was told, I believe one of the writers, the creators, Rachel Ramrus told me, oh, just watch Gone Girl and you'll have it. And I hadn't seen Gone Girl. And so when I watched it, I was like, this was very dark and very serious. And I came back to her and Michael and Kristen. I was like, I watched it. It was quite dark. They were like, that's it. You did it. And I'm like, oh, okay. So it was nice. One would think you would want to see less subtle parody, something that's much more hard laughs, really kind of hijinks and campy. And to have that like as source material to kind of refer to, I thought was really quite elegant and genius. I wasn't expecting it. So yeah.
Grounded.
Yeah.
Yeah, very much so.
And it does make the humor hit in a really surprising way. Like it's almost like you listen to some of Kristen's
the dialogue,
like the dialogue and the narration she does when she's talking about taking risks and how like confusing it is. It's so subtle, but there were so many moments in the performances and in the writing that made me laugh out loud. But it was not it was like a sneaky comedy that is sort of like, layered in a really smart way.
That's such a good word for this, like sneaky. I feel like that's key.
I also think the camera is another player in this.
Yes.
Some of those pan ups and pan downs, I was just like, oh, come on.
The music. Let's talk about the music.
Oh,
almost like soap opera-y a bit. Like in a spoofy way. Oh my God, I was dying.
Yeah. That's great.
And Shelley, kind of jumping back to your character a little bit more with what you were saying about how fun it was to play kind of a terrible person. It's also fun to watch a terrible person who, isn't just incredibly confident in themselves, but also you get to see kind of like the smarts, the intelligence. She's doing a lot of work tracking down her next target and really putting the time and dedication into kind of crafting these characters. And like we see the way that she's pulling the mark now isn't the same story that she's done in the past. She's trying something new. She's changing it up, which is kind of fun to watch as well. And so I was interested in kind of the fun for you in that aspect of getting to play not just a character who's doing fairly terrible things, but the joy in being able to kind of show that she's actually really, really good at it and she's very talented at what she does.
Yeah, I feel like, I believe I played like, she loves like The Godfather. She loved like, there's always like a bunch of like movies where it's the male leads who get to do these things and we root for them and we want them to be bad and like Casino or whatever. I'm sorry, there's a mosquito. And so I just dove into like her wanting to be the female version of that. Like, why can't I? So I honestly, I didn't overthink it. I was just like, it'd be fun to play the female version of this. What I really liked about Chastity was also the dysfunctional dynamic with Rex. Like, him pairing with each character, like Anna and then Chastity, like brought out so much comedy because he's just so earnest and Benjamin just played him so well. I just loved their dysfunction. It was like the Three Stooges really, but just the two and two. I don't know. It was just fun to be like the guys get to do that all the time. So
I love it. Mary, one of the lines that you walk really well with your character is, you're playing someone who puts her entire business and livelihood on the line and takes out a $500,000 loan on her business for her best friend as bail, which again, on paper is fairly ridiculous. But you also play this character in a way where it feels like she never loses her sense of identity and who she is, and still always knows who she is at the core of it. And so it doesn't feel as absurd. And I was interested in how you found that line and that balance.
Yeah, I mean, I think you know what's so interesting is because that was one of the audition scenes was where after she bails her out and is like, I took out $500,000, and even in reading it, I was like, that sounds reasonable. Like it didn't seem absurd to me. Truly, I was like, well, yeah, I mean.
You gotta
take out a $500,000 loan. That was what you do. It did not seem crazy to me. And I think that is really what, I mean, not that that's something I can do in my life, but
nobody should call you.
Nobody should call me. Don't, yeah. But I do think that there's a with how I thought about Sloane is that she really is very matter of fact about things. And I think that is exactly what Anna needs in her life. Like she's not really, it really struck me how lonely she is in this world that she's in, even though she has all these neighbors and people who are commenting on her life, but being a presence for Anna that can give her those matter of fact, that point of view. Yeah, it just felt it all felt very sort of reasonable to me when I was playing her. I didn't have an awareness of the silly things she was doing.
And Christina, there's a little bit of a parallel with your character to Anna. Anna's going through this whole journey of self-forgiveness and kind of going back to the ridiculous connection that your character has. At the same time, she's still kind of going through this trajectory of reconciling with that and figuring out what that means for herself. And so you get to kind of play the arc of that journey that she has within herself internally as well. And so I was interested in how you wanted to approach that aspect of her.
Yeah, I think the entire time I was thinking, again, this woman is ridiculous. How good is this detective? I also think that when she first comes to the door and she asks if she's Anna Whitaker, I do wonder if she has a moment, if the detective has a moment that's like, I wonder if this is the same Whitaker family on the same block that ate my coworker's daughter. You know what I mean? I was really stuck on that. Like, that's hard to forget. That seems like such a sticking point. And the fact that she kind of keeps that in, but I also think that the detective, as I was kind of reading her, I like from the outside looking in, she doesn't seem to have a lot going on either. And we kind of talked about this a little bit. Like Kristen would ask me, like, what is she up to today? Like, where is she headed? Who's at home when she gets home? And I really thought like, no, this is her life. She wants to find something. She wants to find a case and she needs to redeem herself. And so I think as much as it pains her to have Anna arrested when she finds the paint, what is the thing called? The paint knife, the palette knife. I think as much as it pains her to arrest her, I think at the same time that Detective Lane is like, this is my chance to get it right. And so that confrontation they have when I'm interrogating her in the room, I feel for her, but I'm like, you're going to jail and I kind of need this notch in my belt. It's then also though that we have this hilarious moment where she tells the story of like how she came to be a flower painter, artist. And to sit there with, when we taped it, I had to sit there with a straight face while she told me that story, even though we were cutting away to something else. And yeah, I say all that to say, I think that the detective, while she wants to be friends with Anna and she wants to trust her, and believe her, she's got to go for her own. So yeah, she's on her own journey and is to redeem herself
Well,
for letting Massacre Mike go. Yeah.
I so appreciate all three of you diving into the show and talking about it with us. It's a really fun binge watch for everybody. So thank you so much, Mary, Christina, and Shelley.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.